Or are you following in my footsteps now of having some kind of big ass water bottle to drink from?
So that my voice doesn't die.
Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to the finale of our Alien and Predator re-review series. Of course, topping off the whole string of videos with a ranking list of both the Alien and Predator films in one giant list. 12 movies total, from worst to best. Of course, being joined by good old Trevor Boy.
Howdy, everybody.
I've been looking forward to doing this for a long time, and I've certainly had a lot of fun going through this whole series, revisiting some of my favorite films, and rediscovering some of my least favorite films in this series.
It's been quite a journey.
So without further ado, let us begin, shall we, with number 12. Go ahead, Trev.
Yeah, so my number 12, and it's mainly because it's the one that I obviously enjoy the least and don't return to all that often, is going to be Alien Resurrection.
I knew it!
I like the effects. I think there are some pretty humorous moments in the movie. But overall, especially this last time we watched it, it's just the jarring tone, the fact that it can't make up its mind if it wants to be potently serious or just continuously comedic. It's just a muddled tone for me that messes with me, and it just feels detached from the rest of the series. Just every time I watch the first three movies, it feels like a trilogy. It might veer in a direction that doesn't satisfy everyone, but endings, quote unquote, usually tend to be controversial anyway.
Look at The Dark Knight Rises. Wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly. That conversation actually reminded me of it. But you either accept it or you don't, and it's fine if you don't, and it's also fine if you do. But yeah, Resurrection, not much to say here. Again, effects are good. The humor is good in places. A very genre-friendly cast. But yeah, I just don't feel all that inclined too often to revisit it. And I wish that wasn't the case, but it's just pretty detached from everything else. It actually reminds me a whole lot of some other late 90s creature features. But Alien, at least those first three movies, they're like in a whole other league above those. So, again, it just feels detached. So that's why it's my number 12.
You know what? Now that I think about it, like the structure and not really necessarily plot, but just how the movie is shot and how it looks, and also like how the stakes are gradually rising over the course of the film. You know what movie it reminds me of? Deep Blue Sea.
What? Yes, I've actually watched that here recently because it's on Tubi. And I got done watching, I was thinking, man, this kind of reminded me of Alien Resurrection.
I don't know if that was intentional, but and also the gritty, grungy look of Alien Resurrection, and also the kind of gritty, grungy look of Deep Blue Sea, they look kind of similar, which makes me wonder because Deep Blue Sea was directed by Rennie Harlan, right?
Yeah.
If I didn't know any better, I would swear that Alien Resurrection was also directed by Rennie Harlan.
Well, he almost directed Alien 3. He was the director for one of those early versions. Also, the scene where they're swimming to get to the other side of wherever they needed to get to, it also reminds me a lot of Deep Rising because there's a similar scene in that movie as well.
I haven't seen Deep Rising in a long time.
I've watched it here recently, and it's a good time. Steven Sommers should have made more R-rated movies, in my opinion.
No argument there.
Yeah, so yeah, it just feels like a late 90s creature feature because, well, I mean, it was made in the late 90s, but still, I don't know, that just doesn't fit with the other three movies, in my humble opinion, anyway. So yeah, that's why it's my number 12.
My number 12 is one of only 2 movies in this entire series to legitimately piss me off. And after it was over, I felt cheated out of 2 hours of my life. At number 12 is 2012's Prometheus. I hated this movie. I absolutely detest every second of this entire film. I've said this before, it took me 2 tries to watch this movie in full. The first time, I shut it off after like 45 minutes. The second time, there was 2 or 3 occasions where I came this close to shutting it off. I was bored. I was disappointed. I was confused. Prometheus is, to quote Sean Urshan, I think his name is, from I can't remember what the channel is called. Or no, that's not even Sean Urshan. Sean Chandler, excuse me. Sean Chandler Talks Movies. I think that's what the channel is called. He says, like, Prometheus is just too metaphorical and philosophical for me to really get into it. I couldn't agree more. There's so much metaphysical and metaphorical and philosophical subtext and imagery and all this scientific technobabble that goes into it. It just is so dull, so dreary, so dreck to sit through, boring, dull, uneventful, frustrating as fuck. The effects are good, the production design is good, and it is well shot. But outside of that, I don't enjoy a single damn thing about Prometheus. It is just an awful movie as far as I'm concerned. And easily, actually, in my opinion, might be Ridley Scott's worst movie that I've seen thus far.
Well, I think I'm probably going to be the good cop a little bit for that one, but it's coming up soon. But it's not quite right at the bottom. So my number 11?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, so this was actually a little surprising where this ended up whenever I was writing this out. But my number 11 is going to be Predators.
Really?
Surprisingly enough. Yes, which is odd because I've always, in the past, enjoyed this movie. But I was thinking, after we did our review, I've always fought back against the claims that it was a remake of Predator.
Even though it pretty much is a remake of Predators.
Yeah, and, whenever we were talking about it, like you said, if it wasn't for, the new trio of Predators and the fact that it's set on another planet, and even then, if you think about it, those are all things that they could add to a remake. I love my boy Robert Rodriguez. I mean, he's only the producer for this movie. He didn't direct it. But it seems like he just didn't stray all that far away from the original Predator. It unfortunately kind of just holds the movie back. I mean, as a remake, it's fine, but the problem is that it doesn't know it's a remake. So
yeah, it's trying to be a sequel, but it's also Robert Rodriguez overindulging himself and just recreating all of his favorite bits from the first movie.
Yeah, and look, the original Predator is a classic and a very great film, as we'll get to more towards the top.
Mm-hmm.
Almost right there. Not trying to give it away, but so I put this one on more often than Resurrection. I'm more inclined to because I'm more of a Predator fan than I am an Alien fan. But yeah, after our review, it just really dawned on me that as a remake, it's fine, but as an installment in the series, it just doesn't do enough to move things forward. The movie that I consider the proper Predator 3 has some major faults of its own, as we'll get into eventually. But it still feels fresh and I guess exciting in a way that This movie doesn't. And this movie also just takes itself a little too seriously. I mean, all the other three solo Predator movies all have a sense of humor to them. This movie kind of does subtly here and there.
Men, pussies pee. Men piss. What do you do? Unleash. Sure, bruh.
That's 18. So we didn't even get to see it in the movie. But yeah, I don't hate it. Again, I'm more inclined to watch it than Resurrection, but as of this ranking, it's going to be my number 11.
My number 11 is Alien Covenant. Now, this has a little bit more redeeming quality than Prometheus, but like, to quote Cody Leach, Covenant felt like a studio compromise for Prometheus. Like, the studio saw what Ridley Scott was doing with Prometheus, and then they saw the fan reaction to it, and they just said, okay, no. No. But I also feel like that did not sit well with Ridley Scott. And I really do feel like Alien Covenant was Ridley Scott saying, you know what? Fuck you. I will give you what you want in the most bland, boring, least amount of effort way possible. The first half of Alien Covenant is like Prometheus 1.5. Just as vague, just as dull, just as boring, just as overly philosophical and metaphorical as Prometheus. The second half of Alien Covenant is more entertaining, but only because it feels like diet, forced retreads of both Alien and Aliens. The effects are good, the gore is good, the cinematography is good, and the final chase scene on the ship, as rushed and abridged and rip-off of Alien as it is at least entertaining. But overall, and also this movie's bullshit cliffhanger ending had me nearly pulling my hair out of my scalp. Alien Covenant is not a good movie. It's got a couple good things about it, but these two prequel movies, somebody really should have been looking over Ridley Scott's shoulder and saying, look, dude, if you want to pursue this android stuff, that's cool, but don't make that the new focus of your Alien series, because you're going to piss off your fans. And lo and behold, look what happened.
Yeah, it's like I told Nick. The future for this particular thread in the Alien saga or franchise is unclear and uncertain right now.
Unknowingly so.
But I told Nick, Ridley just needs the crap or get off the pot.
Yeah. Very good way of putting it, too.
Yeah. So this is actually a pretty good lead into both my 10 and number 9, but I'll do them one at a time. My number 10 is Prometheus. I like it a little bit more than Nick because I actually find some of the philosophy and concepts here fascinating. The problem is that there are things that really don't have an answer to them. So whenever you pose these questions,
yeah, that's something I forgot to mention. Both Prometheus and Alien Covenant have a shit ton of questions that I'm sure Josh from Movie Timelines can do 2 or 3 13 unanswered questions videos on each of these movies. They ask so many questions, and it seems like they refuse to answer them. You have a whole slew of questions in Prometheus, and then Alien Covenant comes along, answers some of them, but then asks its own slew of questions that it also refuses to answer, partially due to Ridley Scott being so bitter because, people don't want to watch my android jerk-off movie. Oh, well, fuck you then. Ugh.
Well, here's the problem, and it's very interesting. Ridley Scott is an auteur. He's kind of a genius whenever he's firing on all cylinders. But the problem is that he's also kind of a good company man. He kind of abides by what the studio tells him to a degree. So what happens is, particularly with Prometheus and Covenant, is that basically Ridley's working out these things that he's clearly thinking about on a personal level, and he wants to express it on a film tapestry, so to speak. He's working out these ideas that he's pondering and thinking about, but at the same time, he has to abide by what the studio wants him to kind of achieve for a franchise. So basically, when he came to Prometheus, he was like, okay, I want to talk about the space jockey. And actually, I'll just go ahead and say it. Originally, Prometheus and Covenant were just one movie. The script was called Alien Engineers. And it basically played out a lot of the same way that Prometheus does, but the alien stuff that you see in Covenant was actually included in that script. So at some point, whenever Ridley was kind of realizing that, I don't think Alien has any more steam in it, but I've committed to this project, he basically hired the writer for Lost, Damon Lindelof, I think is his name.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, that's, and I agree. Unfortunately, his final draft of the movie is again very again, questions are just posed but never answered. And the thing was that basically Ridley thought, okay, I don't really want to do this Alien movie anymore, even though I kind of want to explore the space jockey, which became the Engineers.
That's another thing too. I saw James Rolfe's review of Prometheus before I watched Prometheus, and he mentioned that the movie explores the space jockeys. And I was like, okay, that actually does sound interesting because, we see the iconic zoom in of the fossilized space jockey. So I would have been like, okay, what are these things? The space jockeys are barely in Prometheus.
Yeah, exactly. And see, okay,
Hi,
so
honey.
that I don't ramble here too much. The problem is that Fox wanted a new franchise, or they wanted to make sure that they were able to have a whole lot more entries. So what could have been just one film was stretched out into, at this point two. And at one point, Ridley was saying that it could have been like 4 or more than that. So yeah, just to wrap up my main thoughts on Prometheus. Technically speaking, I think it's a beautifully shot film. I also happen to really like the musical score, the new theme that they got, and also the thing that occurred to me. You either like it or you don't, and if you do like it, I think what you could compare it to in terms of other sci-fi franchises is the same way that the Riddick franchise started with Pitch Black, which is a very alien-inspired kind of movie, right? And then Chronicles of Riddick takes it into a whole nother direction where it's kind of like a
Star Wars.
Star Wars. It's like a space opera kind of deal. So the way I like to look at it is that Prometheus is kind of a Chronicles of Riddick to the other alien movies, Pitch Black, or even the third Riddick movie, which is also very much like Pitch Black. It actually bridges the gap between those two very well. So the way I look at it is that Prometheus works for me. Obviously not for Nick, and that's okay. For me, it works as, just exploring another corner of that universe. But as I'll continue, whenever we get to Covenant on my ranking, there's just a way that you can do it where it's a little bit more straightforward. So yeah, Prometheus is my number 10. I think fans like to call this the Phantom Menace of the Alien franchise, and it's definitely pushing that comparison because it's even more distantly related to the Alien movies in the same way that Phantom Menace is related to the other Star Wars movies. But yeah, Prometheus is my number 10.
Another thing about Prometheus, too, now that Trev mentions it, yes, it's clear that Fox won another franchise. And in this aspect for Prometheus, it feels very much like either a Stepping Stones movie or like a big first act of a multi-act film series. It feels like a massive setup film. But unfortunately, because of Ridley Scott's bitterness towards the reaction to Prometheus, Covenant feels like an extremely rushed end it before it starts movie.
And we're not quite sure where we're going, which is the frustrating part.
I could honestly talk shit about both Prometheus and Alien Covenant for hours. So let's move on. My number 10 is Predators. Now, I don't hate this one, but obviously upon my most recent review, I didn't dig it nearly as much as I remember digging it because it functions very much like a remake. It feels like Robert Rodriguez overly indulging himself in just recreating his favorite moments from the first movie. And Trev made me realize something. If there's those that love the first Predator and dislike Predator 2, more often than not, they do dig Predators. And as I've seen from Cody Leach's video where he loves Predator, didn't like Predator 2, dug Predators. I was like, okay, yep, there's those people that exist.
So they basically want the first movie again.
Yeah, pretty much. And also, you tell me your dad likes the first movie, but he didn't like the second one, but he likes Predators.
Yes, indeed. So he fits that mold.
I'm definitely not one of those people that fit that mold. I agree with pretty much everything that Trev says. It lacks a sense of humor, so it's just not nearly as fun as the previous two. The Predators just feel so under-equipped and underpowered and kind of dumb throughout the film.
Yeah.
A lot of the characters are either bland or, in the prisoner's case, annoying. I can't remember. In Stan's case, annoying and despicable and unlikable. There's not enough to progress the franchise, but also similar to Prometheus, it showcases a new breed of predator and it showcases a new slew of questions, but the movie refuses to answer those questions. And it also feels like a stepping stones setup movie for another spin-off series focused on this group of people on this game preserved planet, but obviously it just didn't go over because that's not what people wanted. And it just kind of feels like the Terminator Genesis in terms of endings in the Alien and Predator series, where it wants a sequel, but fans don't, and so it's not getting one. Topher Grace is so miscast, and he's so annoying and so unlikable, and his fucking "I'm a serial killer" distorted, crazy Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas drug voice is stupid, annoying, and it just comes out of nowhere. Not handled well. Adrian Brody is great. The action scenes are entertaining. The blood and gore is really nice, and the effects are great. But yeah, Predators just really didn't do it for me this most recent viewing, and don't see myself return to this one often at all.
Yeah, and on that note, we obviously enjoy Genesis far more, in spite of whatever problems that movie has. Check out our review if you want more on that.
Plug.
Yeah, but since we've already mentioned Prometheus and Predators, I'll just go ahead and mention that those two movies, it seems like in response to the fact that they thought the AVP franchise was dead, those two movies actually, oddly enough, ended up having a lot of elements divided because they were separate franchises again. But there were elements from AVP that were seen in Predators and Prometheus. if y'all want a more detailed breakdown, at least for Prometheus, watch Alien Theory's video about it, the title of the video is Prometheus a remake of AVP? It's actually a pretty good video, and it points out how many similarities there are. It's crazy. And I'll just go ahead and point out the thing from Predators is that there's a team up, although very
brief.
Very brief. And there's also the trio of Predators that are featured, and that's the main similarity with AVP. But there's a whole lot of similarities between Prometheus and Alien versus Predator. It's quite interesting. So yeah, check out Alien Theory's video if y'all are interested. But yeah, so my number 9 is going to be Covenant. Mm-hmm. Now, over Prometheus, this movie actually has xenomorphs in it, even though Ridley Scott is clearly just kind of, again, a bit bitter, and he's kind of going through the motions with how he's delivering them. Aside from the neomorph, I actually think the backburster scene is probably one of the 3 most horrifying, at least in my opinion, scenes in the franchise, next to the Kane's Last Supper in the original movie. And if you watch the theatrical cut of Alien 3, the scene where Spike delivers, for lack of a better term, the runner. Yeah, those would be my 3 most disturbing moments in the Alien franchise.
There was Elizabeth Shaw's birthing in Prometheus, which was pretty horrific to watch.
Yes. Yeah, so that would be, those 4 would be the most disturbing scenes from the Alien franchise for me. The scene in the nest from Aliens is pretty quick, but if you dwell on it, it's also disturbing. But again, it's pretty quick. The scene of the one woman, with the chest burster. But anyway, I digress. So Covenant, we have actual xenomorphs in this. The neomorphs are pretty freaky, in my opinion.
Underused.
Underused, yeah, for sure. I think what's most frustrating here is that there's things that were left out of the movie that would have clarified things. In the novelization of Covenant, it is stated that David didn't actually create the xenomorph, as the movie suggests in its final cut. What he did is that he actually recreated an engineer experiment, because in the novelization, when he's talking to Captain Oram, he shows him a fossilized ovomorph, or a fossilized egg. And he says that they had done this before, and I'm recreating it. So I wish that had been left in the movie, because it would have shown that, of course, in David's perspective, of course, he would probably think that he was the creator anyway, even if that's not the case. But also, there's also, and Nick, you have it on the Blu-ray, and unfortunately I don't have this because I have the DVD copy. There's actually a short film called Alien Advent, where David contacts the company, Weyland-Yutani, and informs them about the xenomorph, and he also reveals his intentions of designing a queen. Now, whether or not that has anything to do with Daniels, who is our female lead for the movie, or not, well, we'll never know. And that's the most frustrating thing, is that, again, really Prometheus and Covenant should have just been one movie. Mm-hmm. They should have tied everything in a knot. They would have had their xenomorphs. They would have had something new with the engineers, which was the exploration of the space jockey. But they didn't. Here we are. I firmly believe, especially given his comments here lately, that Ridley Scott should probably just go and continue working on Raised by Wolves.
Get off the pot at this point. Move on to something else.
Exactly. Because it seems like he basically came up with the idea. I mean, it wasn't just his idea. There's another writer for that show, too. But he basically came up with the aesthetic for that show whenever working on Prometheus and Covenant. So I think he needs to just go and do that. But that being said, for me personally, because I know, Nick, you don't like either movie, so you don't care whether they continue or not. For me personally, I think I'm actually working on a treatment to this effect where I wrap everything up. I think they should bring Neil Blomkamp back. And I think that he should take a crack at finishing the story, but have it be very Aliens inspired. And to elaborate on that, basically the plot for one of the drafts of the script that's just kind of floating around out there for the next prequel film is that the engineers basically go after David for revenge. So
yeah.
Again, I'm working on something right now. It's probably going to be a Fictosphere article, but I'm basically going to pitch how I would tie everything up. And let's just say that it's very Aliens inspired, but it also leads into the original film. So on that note, I like the prequel films a little bit more than Nick, but it's frustrating the fact that they don't have a clear direction. I wish they did. But yeah, there's still enough things that I like about them that they're my number 10 and number 9 on my list. So yeah, that's all I'll say for now.
My number 9 is Alien Resurrection. This one, yeah, it's just the most bland and forgettable of the entire series. It's not a bad movie by any means. There's just not a whole lot to say about it. This just felt very much like the studio just saying, we need some money. Let's just throw this out. Now, as a 90s creature feature, it's entertaining. It's got great effects, good action scenes, some good humor. But amongst the 90s creature features like Deep Blue Sea and Deep Rising, it just almost kind of blends into the crowd. Even despite the fact that it has Sigourney Weaver returning as Ripley, clone Ripley, but still Ripley. It has the fantastic effects, and it has the alien name. This is just the one that blends into the crowd the most and is the most forgettable of the whole series. And yes, like Trev says, I realize this now, it does feel very isolated and separated from the first 3. This just feels very much like an addendum episode or like an epilogue episode. It's there if you want to see it, but it's totally unnecessary. And to quote James Rolfe, it's just entertaining trash. It succeeds, but it's still just entertaining trash. Again, it's not bad. It's just not great.
It's basically kind of like what Jason X was for the Friday the 13th franchise, even though I think I like Jason X a little more.
As do I.
Because the thing is that they wanted to do, in that franchise's case, Freddy versus Jason right away. And in this franchise's case, they wanted to do Alien versus Predator. But it just took them a while to come up with the right script. So they had to put something out there just to show that the brand was still alive. So that's a comparison to make.
Yep. All right. Yep. So you're number 8.
Yeah, and speaking of Alien versus Predator, my number 8 is the first AVP.
Oh, really?
Now, yes. Yes, indeed. And the main reason why it's lower than its follow-up and, the other items up top on my list is because I still feel like the Predator element is lacking a bit. It's actually a pretty dang good Alien movie, albeit sanitized, which is another issue. But still, I'll just say it's better than RoboCop 3. It's probably about on par with Genesis in terms of still accomplishing what you want to see from the franchise, even if it is, again,
sterilized
or sanitized. But yeah, the only reason it's as low as it is because the Predator stuff doesn't hit as well as I want it to. But it's still a good time. Lex is a fine example of brown sugar. And I enjoy it whenever I put it on. It's just it it leans a little bit too much in the Alien direction, but in that regard, it's probably a more satisfying prequel than both Prometheus and Covenant. So if you don't like those, then this is probably more your cup of tea. So yeah, it's my number 8.
My number 8 is Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Now, from here on out in the list, these are all movies that I think are good. Though these first couple have some lacking elements to them. Like the next 3 have lacking elements to them. But Alien vs. Predator Requiem, upon further viewing, I don't think is as bad as everyone says that it is. But it still does have quite a slew of problems. But similar to what I stated in my review, it has a lot of problems, but the things that it does right, I think it does right very well. Granted, yes, it is very similar plot-wise to the 88 remake of The Blob. Like, very eerily similar to the remake of The Blob. But I don't really think that's a bad thing because that's a good template to go off of because the 88 Blob is an awesome movie. It's got fantastic practical effects. It's got really good action scenes, a high body count, which I should have mentioned back in my review. Similar to Alien 3, if you want a movie that has a really high body count and lots of kills, Requiem will certainly wet your whistle.
Oh, yeah.
Really good Predator stuff. Wolf is one badass little man. The Pred alien is awesome. Fantastic antagonist. The final fight between Wolf and the Pred alien is a little one-sided, but it is still pretty badass. I still call this a win for Predator over Alien because similar to Freddy versus Jason, Wolf is the first one to inflict the killing blow, and then right after that he gets impaled. Though it kind of looked like he might have survived it, but then the nuke came along. There's a lot of good things to say about Requiem, but the bad stuff, the human characters suck. It's too damn dark. It's kind of mean-spirited, and there's some elements that are just in really, really bad taste. That's about it. Those are the 4 big ones. But still, I don't think it's that bad. It has some bad parts to it, but there's enough good stuff here that if you want to sit down and watch it, and if you focus on the good stuff, it's a pretty decent time.
I think this movie, and it's my number 7, so I'll give my piece. It's pretty much the test of how much you like either one of these monsters. And if you're a Predator fan, you're probably going to lean more towards it, which is why it's a step above AVP for me. Is because of the Predator stuff. I think Wolf is probably my favorite Predator in all the movies. Now that I think about it,
go ahead.
Like Nick said, it takes the template of the Blob. Unfortunately, it's not as well lit or written as that movie. But yeah, still, I mean, pretty much everything that Nick said about Requiem, I agree with. I just wish that the human characters were better. There is some potential for them that, as we discussed in the review for the movie, is that there are some things that have potential, but it's nowhere near as developed as it should be. And another thing, even though it factors into the mean-spiritedness, is that this has an R rating, which is another reason why I kind of elevated above AVP, is that it just feels right. It verges on the ultra violence of Alien 3. I think they're quite compatible in that regard, and also the mean-spiritedness too, if you think about it. But yeah, I mean, I think Nick pretty much took most of the words out of my mouth. I just enjoy this a little bit more than AVP because I'm more of a Predator fan than an Alien fan. But the Alien stuff still works. The Pred Alien's great. All the warriors are doing their thing. So yeah, it's my number 7.
My number 7 is Alien 3.
Ooh.
I fell back into I actually dig this movie mood a lot more, especially mostly thanks to Alien Theory, because I listened to a motion comic of his video of the 3-issue comic book adaptation of Alien 3, which is like a hybrid of both the assembly cut and the theatrical cut. And it was done really, really well. It also has a really unique ending, which I would have loved to have seen in the movie. Before Ripley falls off the crane, she gives birth to the chest burster. But before it manages to scurry off, she grabs hold of it and she says goodbye, snaps its neck, and then falls into the pit with the queen along with her.
Ah, so she pulls a scar.
Yes. So yeah, I appreciate the movie quite a bit, especially in the last few days. I've looked into it a lot more and I appreciate it a lot more. That being said, though, yes, Newt and Rick Hicks dying off. Newt and Hicks dying off in the first act is a massive slap in the face. It kind of is a Terminator Dark Fate moment where you're just like, so all that shit that they went through beforehand, does that just not mean nothing? Yeah, there's a lot of kind of bland and boring characters. It's very bleak and sad and depressing, and Sigourney Weaver just kind of feels like she's phoning it in. Although not nearly as much as Resurrection. That's another thing I will agree with. You can definitely tell she's just kind of going through the motions with Resurrection. You can see that she's trying here, but still, I feel like half the time she is just, I don't want to be here. And she just looks bored. But there's a lot of good things still to say about Alien 3. Like I said, it has a really high body count. There's lots of blood and gore. There's some really good special effects. There's some engaging character stuff. And it does have one hell of a good soundtrack and one hell of an epic ending.
I definitely want to check out that video now because Alien Theory, he has a pretty damn good channel when it comes to alien stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, his ranking, the last ranking video that he did for the movies, I don't agree with his opinion on the AVPs. I actually think he should have left them off. But yeah, his ranking kind of influenced mine a little bit. But
mine slightly as well.
Yeah, but he seems to like both the prequels a lot more than either of us. But I'm probably leaning a bit more in his direction, but for mainly the potential. But yeah, anyway, I need to check out that video because I really would like to see a hybrid version of the assembly and theatrical cut.
I'll send that to you when we're done here. So, moving on, your number 6.
Yeah, I think ours is both the same unless it changed. Is it The Predator?
Yeah, so let's talk about it together. In my original ranking of this series, The Predator was also number 6. Yeah, it still hasn't really changed. It's just the most middle movie of this franchise. Not to say that it's equally good and bad. It almost is. But I think everybody shits on this movie way too much. Way, way, way too fucking much.
I think that it's going to get a following over the years and is going to be looked on a bit more fondly.
Like Terminator Dark Fate.
Yeah, or even Alien 3. And on that note, it's actually kind of funny that they're so close on your ranking because to me, this for me is my, I guess, for lack of a better term, this is my personal preference for a Predator 3. In fact, since The Predator is a pretty shit title, if we're being honest, I like the title that we suggested in the review, Predator Evolution. I think that fits the theme of the movie. But just to kind of fit with the fact that the second Predator movie is called Predator 2, might as well call the next one Predator 3. So in my headcanon, especially since the continuity is there, even for the first AVP, for me, this is Predator 3. And it has some to compare it to RoboCop, which I actually think the first 3 RoboCops and then Predator, Predator 2, and the Predator or Predator 3 actually have a fair share of similarities. But where RoboCop 3 neutered itself with a PG-13 thing, the Predator at least has a pretty healthy dose of R-rated violence.
Mm-hmm.
So it lives up to its rating. But the problem here,
Rory.
I think he would have been, Rory. Yeah, Rory is the problem here. And I think he would have been fine if he was just a kid in the movie. Because, like, there's Newt in Aliens. So that's not unprecedented for the franchise. But what the plot device, for lack of a better term, that they use with him just doesn't work at all. And it always takes me out every time it's talked about in the movie. But other than that, the Loonies are a lovable crew. I think they're fucking hilarious most of the time.
Because we fuck cop.
So many quotes. I actually hope that down the road, Shane Black gets to release his alternate cut, kind of like how there was an assembly cut for Alien 3, although I hope that he participates, unlike David Fincher, although I don't know how he feels about how things went down. Maybe he's like David Fincher and he kind of just doesn't like the final product.
I don't get that sense. I get the sense he's disappointed, but I don't think he's nearly as bitter as David Fincher is.
Yeah, you're probably right, because he was a lot more... Well, promotion is a much different thing nowadays. He was a lot more involved. He was a lot more involved in the promotion for this movie than Fincher was for Alien 3. But then that was like almost 30 years ago, so it's a different world now. But yeah, anyway, not much else to say. I mean, go watch our review because we say a whole lot more there. For me, this is my personal canon Predator 3. But it just falls somewhere in the middle of the pack of this rating because of the problems that it does have. So, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much what Trev said. We have a habit of taking words out of each other's mouths.
It's their brain.
Yeah, Rory is just annoying as fuck. The autism being the next step of evolution is wrong. It's just straight up wrong.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but if someone is autistic, that means that, not to sound anti-autistic or anything, but that means that they're in some ways devolved because of their mental capacity. Well, I know there's various levels of being autistic. You have a high-functioning person with Asperger's, like Jackie Boy, or a celebrity example, Anthony Hopkins. And then you have the lowest level of autism, which is just somebody who has Down syndrome.
Pretty much. Okay, so to entertain the idea that they're trying to go with here, I guess you could say in a transitionary sense, there could be some potential there in terms of the human race's evolution. But as it stands as a whole, you can't just look at it 100% as, okay, this is the next step of evolution. There's layers and arguments to be had on that front. And unfortunately, the movie presents it as just yep, this is what it is. No questions asked. And it just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. Now, again, to also entertain that aspect, if you wanted to specifically say, this is also stupid because 2017 Power Rangers does this too. Someone who is a high-functioning Asperger's individual, take Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, for example. It's never been officially stated, but if you're familiar with Asperger's, Sheldon very much comes off as someone who has a high level of Asperger's. And a lot of times they tend to be very intelligent, but very socially inept. So if you wanted to look at that specifically as maybe a not solely the next step in human evolution, but an element of the next step of human evolution, I could have got behind that a lot more than just saying, yep, autism is the next step of human evolution. Yep, the whole autistic spectrum, that is the next step in human evolution. No, it's not. It's the exact opposite. That's human devolution.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It either can be viewed as like there's parts of it that are transitionary evolution, but then there's also parts of it that are a de-evolution. So again, it just doesn't work at face value the way they presented in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, it's the main thing that bothers me. There's some other little nitpicks here and there, but the more I watch it,
like killing off Fugitive halfway through the movie.
Yeah, stuff like that, or even the CGI is a little bit dodgy here and there.
Oh, yep.
But still, overall, in terms of what I would like to see following the first two movies, this movie more or less meets those expectations. So I'm probably more inclined to put it on. If I'm doing a Predator marathon, I watch the first two, and then I'll probably put this one on.
Hell, you rewatched it, what, 3 or 4 times after we did our review?
Yeah, something like that. Both it and Requiem, too. So they've been kind of the most viewed whenever we've been doing this series. So it's funny how that turns out.
All right. So you want to go next, or do you want me to go?
You go ahead.
Now, we're in top 5 territory. From here on out, these are all fantastic movies. And these are all some of my favorite films. I'm sure Trev's as well.
Yes.
But the least rewatchable of these 3 is going to be the original Alien. Number 5 is the original Alien.
So yeah, let's talk about it together. It's my number 5 too.
Fantastic movie. Without a shadow of a doubt. It's a fantastic film. It's one of the greatest science fiction films of all time. It's one of the top 5 or 10 greatest science fiction horror movies of all time. It's one of Ridley Scott's best movies. But that being said, it's very much a mood piece. You have to be in a certain mood for the slower, creepier, atmospheric, not necessarily like pulling their punches, but more so just the more experimental prototypey stuff to watch the original Alien. And when you are in that mood, and also I guess you could be in a little bit of a Jaws mood, because the more I think about it, Alien and Jaws are so similar.
Oh yeah.
If you're in that mood, the original Alien can absolutely work for you and suck you in and totally enthrall you for its runtime. If you're not, though, it can be a little slow, it can feel a bit cliched, and it can feel a bit too prototypey compared to the rest of the franchise. It's just solely depending on your mood. But still, that being said, it is a phenomenal movie. It's a fantastic film. One of my favorites of all time. Nothing can be taken away from its significance.
Yes, indeed. And I've actually been thinking about it here recently. I don't think the Alien trilogy quite matches up to these movies 100%. But the legendary Godzilla movies, I think at least the first 2 are very comparable to Alien and Aliens, which is actually what they wanted to do with it. Like Godzilla 2014, I feel that Alien is a mood piece. It's a very experimental film. Although I think Alien achieves a lot more of what it wants to do successfully in comparison to 2014. But yeah, that's definitely a comparison I would make. And yeah, it plants the seeds for the other 2 movies that I like that follow it, but they just happen to flower in a much more appealing way, in my opinion. So I mean, I'm going to second most of everything that Nick said. It's an undeniable classic, but it is just a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
A
great start. A phenomenal start. But it's just one of those cases where, because it starts off so good, the only way that you can go from here on out is up.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah, not much else to say about it other than that. And, our review, plug, go check that out if you want more information. So, you're number 4, sir.
Alien versus Predator.
Alrighty.
Yes, it does lack well, I don't think it lacks quite as much as Trev alludes to, but now that he mentions it, you can clearly tell that Paul W.S. Anderson favors Alien over Predator. Ow, that hurt. Which, I mean, if you're an Alien fan over Predator, that's not an issue, but similar to Godzilla versus Kong, because I'm a Predator fan and also a Godzilla fan, more so for Godzilla versus Kong, though, it leaves me just wanting a bit more from the opposite side, which is also odd because the Predators are shown as being the underdogs, and yet they still lose. Also in Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah. And as we said in our reviews, or our review for this movie in particular, the Predator should technically drive the narrative because they basically are what initiates the humans to come down to the Antarctic. And, I mean, their ritual is the main plot device for the movie. But it's obvious, like Nick just said, that Anderson is obviously more interested in the prey than he is the Predator.
Now, one thing AVP, I do believe, does better than AVPR is it still showcases both monsters as having character. Whereas in AVPR, the aliens are just mindless monsters. The only one that sticks out as having character is the Pred Alien, which in that case it works because it's the main antagonist. But still, there could have been like one or two standard drones that had like their own personality to them. Like one was the right-hand man to the Predator, to the Pred Alien, and then another was just like the sadistic killer. But other than that, they just all feel like mindless monsters. Here you have the Queen, and then you have Grid, which is I feel like is the Queen's right-hand man. So yeah, it gives both monsters equal opportunity on screen. There's tons of action, fantastic special effects, a great mythology, and a great story that's introduced here. Epic ass finale, awesome Predators, mostly in Scar. Great diet version of Ripley in Lex, but not a bad thing by any means. Lex is awesome. Overall, I dig the shit out of Alien versus Predator, and it delivers on what the title suggests. Aliens versus Predator.
No, I was just going to say about that thing that you suggested for the dynamic in Requiem. So basically, Ghidorah's heads, but in xenomorph form.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, we're such Godzilla nerds.
Yep.
So
I'm sure Meta would also agree with, too.
So was that all, Nick? All right, so my number 4, and actually my top 4 are kind of interchangeable in terms of how they kind of flip places.
As are mine slightly, but this is just the mood that I'm in and the mood I think I'm definitively in now.
Yeah, exactly. So my number 4 is going to be Predator 2. Probably my second favorite Predator on screen, even though unlike Wolf, he's a bit more careless with his arsenal.
He's also younger.
Also younger, yeah. You get the sense that he's kind of a hot-blooded. He's not quite a teenager like in AVP. like with those predators, but he's kind of like the next step above them, it seems like. You okay over there?
Go ahead. Just took a lot out of me.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than the fact that this is a little bit lower on the bar than the original movie. But as we actually said with a fair amount of these reviews, this is a complimentary piece for the first movie in that what the first one didn't have, this one has, and vice versa. And I think that's probably the best way to look at it. Probably next to The Predator and Requiem, along with those two, this one is the goriest.
Oh yeah,
flick, I would say. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're going to say a whole lot more about it, but as of this ranking, it is my number 4. It usually would probably be like number 3, being the Predator fan that I am. But as of this ranking, it ended up number 4. So yeah, I'll let you elaborate when you get to it. But for now, Predator 2 is my number 4.
Predator 2 is mine 3.
There you go.
Yeah, pretty everything that Trev said. I do think it's a complimentary piece. It falls just shy of the original Predator. Unfortunately, its third act slightly runs out of steam, and that's really the biggest thing that holds the movie back for me, is the fact that its third act does just kind of like slightly meander. There's great stuff that's showcased, but it loses its great forward momentum that the first 2 acts had. But outside of that, fantastic expansion on Predator lore, a great expansion on the Predator arsenal. Lots more kills, lots more blood and guts, more action, badass Danny Glover performance, fantastic musical score. Predator 2, to quote Trev, is a highly underrated sequel and in my opinion, one of the greatest sequels of all time. And is easily, of this entire series, the most underrated installment of the whole series, more so than the first Alien vs. Predator.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's people who still kind of shit on it, unfortunately, but it has definitely gained a lot more of a positive following. But yeah, funny, not only I pointed out that those 3 are the goriest, but they're also the 3 that seem to get the most flack them still. Predator 2, The Predator, and Requiem, which is a shame, but, people are going to bitch.
Yep.
So yeah, my number 3, and usually, actually, whenever I wrote this out before, it was actually my number 2, surprisingly enough. But right now, it's my number 3, and it's Alien 3. Yeah, so probably the best way to sum it up, the reason why it's so high, is that the way that, and I said this in our review, the way that Nick feels about Logan is the way that I feel about Alien 3. There are some creative decisions that you're either going to love or hate, or you're just going to have to accept based on your mood, because this is definitely, like the first Alien, a mood piece.
It's very debatable which one is even more so.
I'd probably say this one is, because I think people are more on board with the first Alien than this one. This is still pretty polarizing. But yeah, if you are okay with the decisions that it makes, I feel that this is a hell of a finale. Hardcore, pretty dark, but if you're going to take out the xenomorph, it's all hands on deck, and you got to be willing to make the sacrifice. So yeah, that's why Alien 3 is my number 3. Sometimes it's my number 2, but right now it's 3.
Well, move on to your number 2, because I kind of cut you off and went ahead.
Oh no, it's okay, man.
No, go right ahead. I want to trade off on our number 2s.
I'm actually kind of curious to see if they're the same, but is it Predator?
Yeah, it is, actually.
All right. So let's talk about it.
The original Predator, fantastic movie. One of the greatest 80s action movies of all time. One of the greatest 80s creature features of all time. It's even better because it's a hybrid of those two. Ow. One of the best Arnold movies, though it's hard, you'd be hard pressed to find a bad Arnold movie.
True.
Great effects, slightly prototypey, but not nearly as much as the original Alien. Endlessly rewatchable, endlessly entertaining. The one drawback for me is the final fight between the Jungle Hunter and Dutch is just so painfully one-sided. It just drives me nuts every time I watch it. But yeah, the original Predator is a special movie. It's just a very, very solid, very fun, very entertaining, highly enjoyable, one of my favorite movies of all time.
I think for the longest time, it was said that the ultimate chick flick was Pretty Woman. It could be said that the ultimate guy's flick is Predator. And I think it actually still lives up to that title, because if you're a creature feature fan, you got a monster. But even if you aren't, I think the plot with Dutch and his boys is still able to bring in people who may not like a monster movie, and they'll still stick around even whenever it is revealed that there's a monster. I guess.
And if you don't like monster movies,
what's wrong with you?
Go sit in your angry masturbation corner and shut the fuck up, because nobody wants to hear your shitty ass fucking opinions. Fuck you.
That's right. I imagine that I'm sure people who like heist or gangster movies probably feel the same way about From Dusk Till Dawn. Depending on how much they like the first half of the movie, they may stick around for the vampire stuff later on. But yeah, I mean, Nick pretty much put it in a nutshell, but I'll just add that this movie and our number one were very much influential to pretty much all the extended universe media that came after this, all the comic books and whatnot. There's some Predator 2 and Alien 3 thrown in there as well. But mainly what all those Dark Horse comic books and all the video games are recreating by combining them as Alien versus Predator is they're basically sandwiching together Predator and Aliens. So, I mean, before we get into our number one, it makes sense that these two would be the top two because they're probably the most influential of the whole bunch. So, yeah, with that being said,
both of our number one is Aliens. This was the one I had the most fun rewatching. Hell, I watched it twice, and I actually rewound a couple scenes both times, which is something I haven't done in a long time. The music is constantly stuck in my head. The action scenes just entertained me and thrilled me the most. Sigourney Weaver's performance once again just blew me out of the water. It's so fun, so entertaining, so awesome, so well made, and I think it's James Cameron's third best movie.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's probably neck and neck there with the original Terminator. It just has that wonderful 80s Cameron flair. And, like I said in our review, not near as bad as T2, but there was a time where I didn't like the fact that Aliens was the one that was talked the most about in the fan base. But the truth of the matter is that it's well-deserved. This is a creature feature that's firing on all cylinders. Mm-hmm. It not only just does everything top-notch in the genre, whether it's its hardcore science fiction elements or the monster elements, but it also has a human element that was so good that it got the attention of the Academy.
Yep.
Oscars and whatnot, which rarely ever happens still to this day with
Sadly,
the genre, unfortunately.
Because they're just such snooty-ass snobs.
Yeah, they need to
broaden their horizons.
Yeah, exactly. And it took the words right out of my mouth. But yeah, this is just one of those all-time greats, and it's hands down the general public's favorite. The fans also, it's their number one favorite, and it's well deserved. So,
now, don't get me wrong. I'm still Team Yautja, still Team Predator, but in the overall scope of the movies, Aliens just is my favorite. There's nothing wrong with it.
And also to add to the fact that, you gave this more than one rewatch here recently, I'm probably going to try and watch the first 3 movies at least another couple more times before I move on to something else. Because, for me, it's the Alien. Yeah, for me, it's the Alien trilogy, Predator 1 and 2, and I'm gonna controversially, because it's fresh, I'm gonna put the Predator up there too, because that's how much I enjoy it, in spite of its flaws. That's a good 6 movies right there that, as far as solo efforts, really define the Predator and the Xenomorph, or the Yautja and the Xenomorph. And then everything else, as we discussed, it has its varying degrees of great and suck. So, yeah.
And thankfully, it is a majority of a franchise where it's good. But unfortunately, the parts that suck really suck.
Well, and I'll also say, just to be, the devil's advocate, and just to, shake it up a little bit, I would like the prequels a whole lot more if I knew where they were going for sure. I mean, I have an inkling here and there, but there's no guarantee, especially when the captain of the ship is just kind of
not interested.
Meandering. Yeah, not interested. He's kind of meandering. So, I mean, there's stuff that they can deliver upon with those. I just don't know who can do it officially. So, like I said, I'm going to try and do that myself in the meantime. But, yeah, I mean, that's all I can say about those right now. Yeah, you got anything else to say, Nick?
Nope. That's it. That's the end to our Alien and Predator review series. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it, despite the fact that my joints have been painfully popping this entire video.
It wasn't even long either.
Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. Put your ranking down in the comments below. Go check out Trev on Fictosphere, and go check out his channel and comment spam him to give us more videos.
Oh, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, because I think there's some in our audience who actually haven't seen some of these, definitely watch our top 5 at the very least.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Definitely do that.
For either of our lists, because they were pretty much similar except for one. But still, those 2, regardless of where they fell on the list, still give them a watch. And then if you like those, check out the rest.
Look forward to our next video. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. And remember, just go out and watch these damn movies. And if you don't like them, you know where the angry masturbation corner is. So shut the fuck up. And I will see you guys in the next video.